sending a minor inappropriate messages, with his main public post appearing to be him playing chess against someone playing checkers. Though that hasn't been his only post, as he's been replying to people on Twitter, where also we've seen a mixed reaction. Some seeming to support, saying things like, "I'm glad you're back and hope to hear your side of all this sooner than later." Though on the other side of this, a lot of the top comments are things like, "The Act Man posting, so you just came here to play a game of chess, huh?" with Chris Hansen, as well as, "Is this you playing with a minor?" To which Guy Beam responded, "Good one, she/her. The internet will never fix your real threat, depression." And I mean, just by looking at the number of likes on those posts, you see how divided the internet is on this. But for now, we really just have to wait and see what's gonna happen from here for both of these situations. And of course, in the meantime, I'd love to know your thoughts. And then we've got a huge update on a story a lot of you really cared about. After 34 years in prison for a crime he did not commit, Christopher Dunn is finally free. For those of you that maybe missed this, you were late to the party, Dunn was just 18 years old when a Missouri courtroom convicted him of murder in 1991. And that was even though the state presented virtually no evidence apart from 2 eyewitness testimonies that were later recanted as lies. With him going away for 34 years, fighting for his release every minute of every day until last week, when the judge vacated his conviction, meaning he could finally go free. But then, like we talked about, Republican Attorney General Andrew Bailey appealed that ruling in an effort to keep Dunn locked up, with the prison then refusing to let him go, which led to the judge to threaten its warden with contempt of court. But then the Missouri Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, and it ruled that Dunn couldn't be released until the St. Louis Circuit Attorney decided whether to retry the case. But thankfully, for all the reasons we talked about last time we covered this, the attorney declined to do so. And so finally, after all this time, the doors opened for Christopher Dunn. And as he stood there outside the courthouse in front of his supporters, he described what it was like being stuck in limbo for the past week.
To hear the decision of the judge and then get prepared to leave on Wednesday, only to be brought back into the prison. It was torture.
Dunn also thanked everybody who helped set him free, including his lawyers and the media, and then giving some inspiring words for all those other innocent people still stuck behind bars.
I come from a strong family. I don't know how not to fight. This is what we have done the majority of our lives. And whether you want to believe it or not, everyone that's in prison, there's a chance for everyone. The thing is, though, they can't give up.
And then, man, just one day after the horrific mass stabbing at a Taylor Swift-themed dance and yoga workshop in Southport, England, and more violence has erupted at the same spot. Right, like we talked about, on Monday, an assailant wielding a knife interrupted this workshop and they killed 3 girls and wounded 10 others, including 2 adults. And what we saw yesterday is that over 1,000 people showed up for a peaceful vigil, with mourners laying down wreaths, toys, and candles in memory of the victims. But then also, just a couple blocks over, there was a crowd forming outside the Southport Mosque. And these people, reportedly, they weren't there to mourn, they were there to cause violence. Right, according to police, they were believed to be members of the far-right English Defense League, which is an Islamophobic organization known for street demonstrations like this. Now, as far as why they cared about this attack on Taylor Swift fans, it has to do with speculation that the attacker was an Islamic asylum seeker who had recently arrived in Britain. But there also being a specific name that was circulating on social media, though, like I talked about yesterday, the authorities quickly shot that down as false. But with all this, police have confirmed that he was in fact a 17-year-old boy born in the UK to Rwandan parents. And as of yet, there is no indication if he was Muslim or had any links to a terror group, though of course more information is forthcoming. But as far as what we saw, you had hundreds of these protesters standing off with police, some wearing masks, others chanting "No surrender" and "English till I die." And then at some point they start throwing objects at the mosque, with its chairman Ibrahim Hussein, telling the BBC they smashed all the windows, they broke all the fences, and obviously the chanting and the screaming and the anger just was overwhelming for all of us. With them also reportedly exploding firecrackers and eventually turning their attention toward the cops, now dressed in riot gear, throwing bottles, rocks, and trash bins at police. They even reportedly tore bricks free from garden walls in the residential neighborhood and lobbed those at cops. They then appeared to somehow ignite fires, torching a police van and several other vehicles, which you can see filling the air with smoke. And ultimately, by the time the dust settled, you had dozens of cops injured, though exact numbers vary from source to source. Right, you had Reuters reporting that 22 were hurt, with 8 suffering from more serious injuries like fractures, lacerations, and a concussion, as well as there being 2 police dogs that were wounded by bricks and a third that suffered burns. But then you had the Northwest Ambulance Service reporting that 27 officers were hospitalized and 12 more were treated and discharged at the scene. But then also at the same time, you had the local police federation reporting that more than 50 officers were hurt. But whatever the number is here, the fact is that the same cops who came to the aid of stabbing victims on Monday found themselves getting pelted with bricks on Tuesday. Right? So the shock and the outrage at this riot, it was widespread, with, for example, Prime Minister Keir Starmer posting on X, "Those who have hijacked the vigil for the victims with violence and thuggery have insulted the community as it grieves." names. They will feel the full force of the law. And we also saw the Liverpool Region Mosque Network writing in a statement. A minority of people are attempting to portray that this inhumane act is somehow related to the Muslim community. Frankly, it is not, and we must not let those who seek to divide us and spread hatred use this as an opportunity. Now, with all that said, it's also important to hit on another aspect of this story, like the fact that there are people who are not exploiting this tragedy to hate on Muslims and immigrants, pushing for the government to now do something more about knife violence. Because although the number of fatal stabbings has kept relatively steady over the past decade, overall knife crime did jump a bit last year, with most cases reportedly being very personal, one-on-one attacks. So, dramatic mass stabbings like the one on Monday, they grab a lot more attention. But of course, the thing is it is very difficult to regulate knives, because everyone needs different kind of knives for ordinary things like cooking. Unlike, for example, guns, which Britain clamped down on effectively more than 2 decades ago. But for now, as we wait for more information to come in and we watch what's happening out there on the streets, I gotta pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts here? And then, so we've got to talk about Kamala Harris and Donald Trump having a very different last 24 hours. Because Harris is coming off of possibly one of the best political weeks I have ever seen. She's been a fucking rampage. She's been mobilizing voters, raising historic sums of money. Just generally, the vibes have shifted. While mostly we've just been seeing stats, last night we saw that on display in Atlanta, where they're hosting a rally where around 10,000 people showed up to cheer her on. You also had Meg Thee Stallion and Quavo there. Also, Georgia Senators Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff showing up. And it wasn't just the crowd that was ramped up. Kamala herself delivered a super strong speech that had incredibly powerful moments, with one of the most clipped and shared moments being her mocking Trump for not committing to debate her.
Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you've got something to say,
You also had Harris taking aim at Trump's policies. Like, for example, when she took aim at his record on immigration, as well as him killing the bipartisan border bill.
Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been talking a big game about securing our border, but he does not walk the walk. Or as my friend Quavo would say, he does not walk it like he talks it. So here is my pledge to you. As president, I will bring back the border security bill that Donald Trump killed, and I will sign it into law and show Donald Trump what real leadership looks like.
Right, and with all that, Harris bringing that energy to Georgia, it's very important for a number of reasons. With probably the biggest one being that before Biden dropped out, Democrats, it looked like they didn't have a fucking chance to win the state, with the president even starting to shift his campaigning to other battlegrounds. But now, with Kamala as the nominee, experts are saying the state is back in play, with one Democratic strategist even describing Harris's candidacy as a defibrillator. And the thing is, from the emerging polling, it looks like a national trend. Remember how I said, the polling's always gonna change, but we really need to wait for the first round of high-quality polling to come in with a Harris-Trump matchup, right now that it's real and not just some hypothetical while Biden was the nominee. Well, the results have been coming in, and we have seen a major swing, with multiple recent surveys indicating that she is closing the gap in key battlegrounds and wiping out Trump's lead, with everything trending more and more towards this being a toss-up when you consider the Electoral College. Because again, I'll always say it, fuck a national poll. Every 4 years, it comes down to a handful of battleground states. But as far as the polling's concerned, again, polls will change from now till election day. And so with that, there are 2 big questions. Is this Harris surge a pop? This is the honeymoon period, or is the beginning of a larger trend? And if this is a trend, what's the ceiling on that? And 2, can Harris and her campaign keep this momentum until election day? And also, all of this is before she has announced a VP and the Democratic National Convention has not happened yet. And so with all that, whether you're a Dem, an Independent, or a Republican, I'd love to know your thoughts on everything Harris right now. But then, like I said, Donald Trump is also in the news, but it is for a different reason. And that is because as I was recording today, he went to the NABJ convention, the National Association of Black Journalists, and there are a few clips that have gone viral. The first of which just being how everything started.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language